Yes, I know, yes, I know, yes, I know, yes, I know, was a long, long time ago. Gotta go, gotta go, gotta go, gotta go, but I'll hold up till you show. We can fall, we can fall, we can fall, we can fall to the unknown world below. I can see fire in your eyes, tell me they lie. Step in my shoes, don't fade away. Don't fade, don't fade away. I walk the line, read the signs, to the brighter day. Will you come my way? Yeah. Step in my shoes. Don't fade, don't fade. Yeah. Step in my shoes. Don't run, no fade away. Don't run, no fade away. Don't run, no fade away. Don't run, no fade away.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for making it to this event by the BIPOC Caucus for Science for the People. Yeah, I just wanted to welcome everyone to the space first. So we have an hour allotted to this. Sorry, we got started a little late. But yeah, we hope you stay till when this naturally ends. And so we'll probably go till, 7 minutes or so after the hour, or we'll try. Let's see, so we'd like you to, if this comes up, I think we've disabled the unmute button, not to inconvenience you, but to prevent any sort of stray audio button presses. So please reserve your questions till about 10 minutes before the hour's end, and then we'll give you the opportunity to ask questions. And the most orderly way to probably do that is to enter it into the chat, and then we'll have one of our volunteers bring it up to any of our, I believe we have 4 panelists from 3 orgs, right? Which we'll have them introduce themselves to you. We're looking forward to a very instructive, very illuminating conversation. We're very privileged to have these 3 movement orgs spanning, really across the globe. One from the United States in Nevada, one from San Diego, but representing a lot of Latin American work, who work in Latin America, and then another from the Philippines. So, without further ado, I'd like to ask, say, AGHAM from the Philippines to introduce themselves first.
Yes, good morning, everyone from the Philippines. I am Benny Cosico. I am the current Secretary General of AGHAM. AGHAM is Advocates of Science and Technology for the People. So it's a volunteer organization of scientists, engineers, and science advocates who are actually advocating for a community-based science and technology. We're more on advocating a science that is very much relevant to the community needs.
And then Enteng.
Hi, magandang umaga. Good evening to all. I'm Enteng Bautista. I'm part of the Secretariat of AGHAM. I'm also currently doing the international solidarity work of our organization. As Penny says, we are organization of SNP advocates here. Also fighting for not only the rights of the sector, but also the Filipino people for their democratic rights and civil space. Thank you.
Then can we have Jessica from CIEJ go next?
Hi all, my name is Jessica. I am a member of the Center for Interdisciplinary Environmental Justice, which is a collective of natural and social scientists and activists and educators. We are somewhat based in San Diego, but we also have members who are in the Bay Area, in Texas, and in Guerrero, Mexico. And we've been working for the past couple of years to support indigenous communities in Chile and Argentina who are resisting lithium mining, which is groundwater mining also, to make electric vehicle batteries and other energy storage technologies. So we've been formulating some scientific the scientific side of that, and also just the sort of translocal organizing and support. And since the pandemic started, we've also been meeting a lot of climate activists more locally, and also lithium resistance more local to us also, including some folks in Arizona who are facing lithium mining on or directly surrounding the Hualapai Reservation. And there's another member from CIEJ who is present here who may be able to speak if something comes up, just as a heads up.
Great, well, thank you both for being here, and then thank you for the members of AGHAM for being here. And then lastly, Duranda.
Hello, everybody. My name is Duranda Hinkie. I am a Fort McDermott Paiute Shoshone tribal member, and that is located on the Nevada-Oregon border in the United States. I'm really happy to be here. I'm also a part of the Atsakurakwa or the People of Red Mountain Committee, and that is just Fort McDermott tribal members forming a group to make their voices heard for the lithium mining that is going on near our reservation. And yeah, just thank you for allowing me this space and time to talk.
And then I'm told that Amra from CIEJ is also here. Is it possible, can we unmute Amra?
Hi, good to connect. Hi, my name is Amra Salamon, and I'm another member of CIEJ. I do some more of the, I guess, policy work and like understanding like historical and political context. I do a lot of work with the collective supporting our Indigenous communities in the Southwest that we're working with, as well as the communities in Latin America that we're working with, thinking through, different political strategies, or, providing some kind of historical and socio-political background when folks need that type of support and just organizing. Glad to be here and excited to have this conversation with you all.
Thank you. So we're very lucky to have 6 panelists today. Thank you for gracing us with your presence and your work and, speaking to it. So we wanted to bring these different groups together because they're not so different. They have a lot of common intersections in their work. And especially, we wanted to engage them from the perspective of confronting imperialism in our age today, right? Especially as it touches on the climate crisis. A lot of people would characterize it as a upcoming catastrophe, right? The clock's ticking, and we need to support. We lean on the work of the panelists today, but we're also looking as audience members to support them however way we can, and hopefully this webinar will further illuminate on that. So to move forward, Sara, could you take over and then start with our questions?
Yes, of course. And of course, to the panelists, if there's anything that another panelist says that you want to respond to, please just raise your hand, and so we can get that dialogue going. So our first question, and I'll start off with Duranda, is what features of the other panelists' struggles do you recognize in your own? and how would you express solidarity for that movement?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for us, we see this lithium mining, but this hasn't just been happening, right now to us. It's been happening to Argentina, Chile, Bolivia, Australia, all over. And these places are indigenous lands. And so, we see this violence and contamination on these indigenous lands and then on indigenous people, and it's all over the world. And so, that's why a lot of us are here, is to, talk about and open these spaces for people. And so another way that, we would like to stand in solidarity with, the Peach Springs lithium mine coming up, and then as well as the indigenous tribes down in Bolivia and Argentina and much more, is connect with those people. And because if we help them, they help us, and standing together is like the best way to do that. And we're starting to see that more and more and more as we gain growing opposition to the lithium mines. And so I'm really glad that I'm here on this call and that I can continue this network of standing in solidarity for other people, and then hoping they can help me out as well. And so, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Duranda. I think, yeah, when I just to respond a little bit to what you're saying, makes me think of like the need for, so at least in the United States, we internalize so much nationalism. And I think when we start to see solidarity between similar movements and sites of colonialism and imperialism, that you can see how the contradiction and how that starts to break away. And so creating solidarity becomes very clear, like the path forward. Thank you. Okay, and Feni, I'll now share that question with you. Again, what features of other panelist struggles, maybe what you just heard, or another perspective that you recognize in your own movement?
I think we can really identify with what's the story of what we've heard right now, because in the Philippines there's a lot of foreign large-scale mining activities, and one of those would be very much a concern of various countries. Like in El Salvador, we have the same mining companies operating here in the Philippines, the Oceana Gold. And as a scientist, we're very much involved on issues of the people, because we've been conducting environmental investigation mission in the communities. And we've found out that there's been a lot of environmental violations by this mining company. There's been a significant amount of water depletion because of the mining operation. And we're trying to engage and involve more scientists to explain this and to be able to connect these issues to the mining operation. And all the studies, the field work that we've been conducting, we're trying to connect this to the struggles of the community. And we're expecting that the community will be able to use this study in order to forward their own advocacy, their own campaign, and also to be able to get the justice that they need, because their rights have been violated because of this environmental destruction. And it's also a welcoming for us to be able to connect with other organizations who are doing all these things. And we're in solidarity with them. And by means of sharing our own struggles, sharing the struggles of our own communities, and be able to connect with other countries who have the same struggle, and to discuss what are the solidarity activities or solidarity actions that we can do in order to end up this imperialist plunder of our own resources.
Thank you, Feni. Wow. I was just rereading the CIEJ piece that for Science for the People was written a while ago, and I remember there was a prompting and also a reference to some and I'm an earth scientist, so it stood out to me, the hydrogeologist studies that were countering what like the companies were trying to propose of like the effects of the mining on the drinking water and all of that. And so I think that, I mean, to hear you say that immediately made me think of that. And that's such a direct way to prompt hydrogeologists. I mean, I'm already thinking now, like the next geophysical union.
Yes, good thing that you've said that, because we are connected with the Union of Concerned Scientists, because they're offering some of their experts to be able to help with, the community. So it's a good thing that we're able to engage with other big organizations, and we're talking about U.S. scientists, but the scientists, they're very much well-meaning scientists that they're actually willing to help those communities, especially in third world countries. So it's a good thing to have this, solidarity and engagement with a bigger network of scientists around the world.
Yeah.
Maybe Enteng can add up
Yeah,
to
please do.
some issues.
Thank you, Fanny.
Hi again. Yeah, I'll just want to expound aside from fighting a big corporation, particularly those in extractive industries. As Penny mentioned, a lot of scientists are involved, and in the course of their involvement, there's a lot of human rights violation among victimizing the communities, but also our scientist activists. Currently, we have two pioneer members. That's Ray Casambre, a physicist, Delay Padilla, an agriculturist, who are now in jail because of their activism. So that's one also a major issue that we are facing now. We are fighting now. But we still got time, of course, as like you had to give solidarity to other scientist organization outside the Philippines. AGHAM is also the current secretariat of International League of People's Struggle Commission 13, which means the Commission for Scientists, for Science and Technology for People's Development. Recently, we issued a statement how science are being used to oppress and invade and subjugate the Palestinian people by the Zionist rulers or occupiers of Israel. So that's my 2 cents regarding AGHAM advocacy. Thanks.
Thank you, Anton. Yes. Thank you so much, both of you. I'm trying to react, but of course, now can we hear from CIEJ? I don't know, Amra, if you would like to go first, and then maybe from Jessica. Again, the question is, what do you recognize maybe similarities of the other panelists' struggles in your own, and how do you express solidarity with their movements?
I think the thing that we kind of came together and formed our collective around was they really, I think what the other panelists are speaking to is the need for science to be a tool of liberation and a tool, to use against extraction and, to protect the land, protect the people. And we believe that science can be a decolonial tool if it's done well, if it's done with decolonial principles and practice, and, building relationships that are really meaningful and equitable. And so we kind of call our practice decolonial feminist science, and that's what we're trying to do, where we kind of come together through a feminist critique of science, as well as a critique of science as the tool of colonialism, and we're trying to undermine that. So I think our approach to solidarity is that we really try to build relationships first, and build long-standing, meaningful relationships, and then allow folks to tell us what they need, and how us as scientists can be useful Hi. Sorry, I have a little one who wants to say hi as well. Um, but yeah, so that's I think a lot of our approach, and some of the things that we're doing is combating some of the same issues. We've been taking on lithium particularly as an issue that we think is very problematic because there's this greenwashing of that type of mining. It's not like coal mining where people know it's bad. There's this idea that somehow lithium is going to be a false climate change solution, and that's what we're really trying to tackle, and trying to find ways to support that through organizing, social media. But as activists, like we all do, as members of the collective, we all have our individual activist commitments as well. And trying to understand the context that we're in, especially here at on the border. So connecting to issues like border resistance, mass incarceration, Zionism, as was mentioned before, settler colonialism. Those are some of the things that are here locally that we try to engage in as activists as well. I don't know, Jess, if you want to talk more.
Sure. Yeah, that was great. And I just wanted to say also that it's always wonderful to meet other scientists who are trying to do science differently and use it in ways other than it's been used in the past. So it's great to be here and to talk with you all. I think one of the really powerful things about solidarity and what we can see when we look at our movements together is that it really helps point you toward the root causes of these problems. If you look at one side, I think it's quite easy for somebody, for example, who's like a climate activist, who's all gung-ho about electrification and whatnot, to say, oh, okay, well, this side is bad, but maybe we can find somewhere else where we can get lithium or, nickel, cobalt, all of these other things that we need to go through this green, just transition into like a renewable energy future. But when you look at all these struggles together, you see that no, like there are sacred waters everywhere, there are indigenous peoples everywhere that these mining companies are targeting. So this just fundamentally is not the actual change and transition that we need to be making. It's just a technological one. It's not actually tackling the economic system or the imperialism that that has allowed fossil fuels to be used and or required fossil fuels to be used also, and now is just turning that into this mineral extractive economy. And so I think a lot of the solidarity work that we've also been trying to do has been doing the reframing and the reimagining of what are we looking forward to in the future and what are we trying to move towards, if it's not this this technological transition from fossil fuels to lithium and other metals. Like what are we looking for? What are we trying to create? And those are really big, difficult questions. But that's I think what a lot of our solidarity can sort of build toward.
Great, thank you, Jessica. Awesome, thank you everyone for sharing your responses to just that first question. Already so much power in that, I feel. Our second question, and I'll throw this to Enteng, if you're ready, is who are the main antagonists and culprits that you faced in your movement?
Okay. In the Philippines right now, of course, the one who primarily promotes a backward and colonial science, education, and a stunted economy is the Duterte administration. That's the current government. And in the past several or over a century, the different governments in the Philippines or administrations was supported by the imperialist United States. But this time around, there are two imperialist masters that being served by the Duterte government. Now it's China and now and the US. So that's that's the main protagonist, that the three, the Duterte, the US, and China being the protagonist in the Philippine society. Yeah, so you can see the involvement, intervention of this, particularly the US and China, in extracting our natural resources, as we are talking about, like natural gas, minerals, magnetite, gold, you name it. Uh, and energy, these corporations, or the corporation based in these imperialist countries, are the one who are now extracting and depleting our resources. Of course, the Duterte government use or impose these policies, these projects, with the help of the state military. So that's why most of the violations are being committed by suspected military forces and agents. I think Fanny, if she can add something.
May I also add up, actually the national government agencies are being used as a tool by this administration to put forward their own agenda. Let's say, for example, the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, they're the ones facilitating the application, the approval of application for the mining companies, and they're even defending all these mining companies from those environmental violations committed by the big corporations. So we could say that um, the government is in itself the enemy of the state at some point, because they're the ones pushing for all these big projects that are not actually helping the communities, but it even worsened the condition of the communities. So it's part of our engagement, and when we're trying to present our data, we present this um, to the these government agencies, hoping, at least hoping, that they could act on it. But unfortunately, they're the ones defending it. They're the ones protecting the big corporations instead of siding with the community. So that's basically the experience of AGHAM.
Wow, thank you both. Um, can we hear from Jessica or Amra and Siege? Again, who are the main antagonists y'all have been facing in your movements?
Jess, you want to start?
Sure. Okay, I can give it a go. There's a lot of sort of individual entities that you could name. So, for example, in Chile and Argentina, there are these specific mining companies. Some of them are domestic Chilean companies. Some of them are Canadian, American, Chinese, that are coming in and making mining claims and operating these mines, and then sowing discord among the communities to make it easier to sort of exploit the resources and workers as well. There's the laws and lack of laws are sort of both tools that communities have used and also tools that mining companies have taken advantage of. And so, for example, the communities in the Salinas Grandes region in Argentina have used like the Declaration of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People to say, you haven't obtained free, prior, and informed consent from us. but it's also not a binding law, and so there's sort of shortcomings to that. So I don't know. There are these tools that are sort of being employed by multiple players in this, and a lot of times these agencies that are meant to be protecting the environment and the people end up really doing the opposite. So like in the Peach Springs mine in Arizona, the mining company was able to go out and do exploratory drilling without getting any sort of permission or permitting from the community or from the government because of these very weak and mining favorable laws. And now, the Bureau of Land Management, which is supposed to regulate and permit these mines and sort of do these environmental assessments saying like, this is going to be harmful, this is not going to be harmful, have done a really poor job of doing that and made it look much less harmful than it would be to do a further stage of this exploratory drilling. So yeah, I mean, there's all these sort of individual entities that come up along the way in this process, and ultimately like the antagonists, I think, are these sort of larger systems, right, of how the state operates and serves capital and colonialism, and now how greenwashing is this tool to make all of that seem like a good thing.
Yeah, I'll just add that it's like at these multiple layers of, it's government, it's corporations, but it's also the demand and the desire, right? It's the consumer, and it's also oftentimes other environmentalists and other scientists. A lot of the folks that, and we all went through our scientific training, and a lot of the folks that we went to school with, they're going into industry to do the bad thing, So part of the challenge, what Jessica spoke to earlier, that we really work on is how do we confront other scientists and other environmentalists around the demand that they're creating for these false climate change solutions like electronic vehicles? Because we can say like Elon Musk is a bad guy. I mean, that's obvious. But, all of the folks who are also demanding a Green New Deal that requires extraction and desecration of sacred indigenous land are also part of the problem, right? And so that's what we're confronting as well.
Thank you. And Duranda, can we hear from you?
Yeah, I'm just going to reiterate what most people have said before, and it's really these larger systems. And it's really interesting to hear what's happening in the Philippines and how it's kind of like, similar in many ways. And so, the main antagonist that we're facing in our movement is this terrible US mining law of 1872. And really, the people who approved this is the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management. And so they are tied behind their back with this US mining law. And basically what this mining law is saying is that public land is priority for mining in general, in mining claims, and that's why we see so much mining in Nevada as well as all over the globe, the United States, but then again on the global side too. And then it just it trickles down to a bunch of other things, and I think it's just an oppression of Indigenous peoples for so long, and it's really not that long. It's only like what 100 and well, for our tribe, like 150 years, and then, about 500 years of, colonialism hitting North America and South America. And so, yeah, I just think it's like this, like the system that we're in of capitalism and colonialism. And so it's just, how it's set up for us. It's very oppressing. But yeah, that's what we're seeing is, the big bad guy is this huge US mining law. And it's trying to get reformed right now. We're trying to, really push for that because it does need to be changed. It hasn't been changed since 1872. And to me, it just doesn't seem as if that public lands in the United States should be going to mining specifically, and all for it, and, priority. So we really see that. And so that's why we're pushing for being able to get in contact with the Department of Interior, the Secretary, Deborah Haaland. She's Indigenous as well. And that's really awesome because it feels as if we can talk to somebody that knows, those backgrounds, those morals, that on that same level, like she gets it, and so we're hoping that that's, our savior, because she has the absolute direct power to rescind the this mining project. And I think it would be considered the federal minerals withdrawal, and that's what she's able to do. And so just going off of everybody else is really just these larger systems, but then, really trickling down for us, it's the US mining law.
Wow. Thank you, Duranda. I was totally ignorant about that law, and I hope that everyone here can go read about that and learn about putting more pressure, because I feel like it's not centered in these conversations even. Thank you. I'll pass it now to Ed, who's going to facilitate the next couple of questions.
Yes. Wow, I learned so much. So thank you all for your very thorough and thoughtful questions. I'll stay with Duranda. There was a lot there, and I appreciate the identification of larger systems, namely capitalism and imperialism, as we've been talking about. I'm curious, as identified by CIEJ, right? It is the common person that participates in these larger systems, right? As Amra mentioned, it's also the consumer, right? That that buys the electric cars and what have you. That's been, as Jessica identified, greenwashed as the saving solution for the crisis that we're in. As an Indigenous American, what would you say to the common American that is, usually uninformed, right? Because the function of imperialism has been so much to put these issues, especially around land and Indigenous rights, and brush it under the rug. What would if we could call it, what would your plea be, or what would your statement be?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I would just try to move through it as best as I can. So stick with me. But I think it would just be that we got to look at how this country was, established. It was established by taking it and, hurting those Indigenous peoples, those lands, and all across North and South America. And so a lot of the times I think we forget that, we do have very colonial ways ourselves. And that's why, decolonize ourselves is a really big movement right now. It's just because we do need to look at what we're doing if we're implementing these settler colonialism things on people. And, it's a really harsh cycle. And so it's really a really good thing to start decolonizing ourselves. And so to say that to and an average American would be quite difficult, because you want to start with the education. It's always education. It's not oh, you're in the wrong, you're not doing that right. It's always educating hey, this is a land acknowledgement, you're on these Indigenous lands. And then I think a few other panelists brought this up about these Indigenous lands, but moving to lithium and then greenwashing, and then having all of these other graphite, cobalt, nickel, everything else that goes along with lithium. On top of lithium, if we continue with lithium mining, we're going to most likely can continue with coal, gas, and oil. And so it's just like, when does it stop? When do we really put our foot down and say, how do we save the earth by destroying it? And that's what lithium mining is doing. You still have to do the non-renewable tools to get renewable energy. So, it's kind of like pick your poison, but, telling the average American, we can't live that American dream. This is not manifest destiny anymore. We really got to think about how we're impacting people and their culture and their lives, and then also on like the planet, our environment. Climate change is real, and so we need to start looking at like maybe ways of consuming less. And that is my main solution, is just consuming less, being not that person that buys, a new car and a new phone and a new laptop every year because of a new update or something like that. So there's really no like perfect answer to this question. I really hope I moved through it as best as I possibly could, but I'm really interested to see what the other panelists say.
Thank you. Thank you for your thoughtful response, Randa. And we can stay on it. I think if we can, we can engage CIEJ. Can you respond and add to what Duranda said? Especially, I'm curious, applying that decolonial feminist science lens that you spoke to, like what that framework can, how that can shift concrete conditions that you spoke to before.
So the decolonial feminist science lens, like Amr was explaining it earlier, is very much about the relationship building, and that being the center of any sort of research or data collection or anything that happens. And I think that actually is also very applicable to what an average person, how we can try to engage people who aren't necessarily like activists, or people who are really committed to doing this in a large portion of their lives, and try and help them reframe like what climate solutions and environmentalism look like, and challenge them to look not at things that you can buy or consume, things that are like material, but ways that you can like restructure your relationships with people and with the planet, your local environment, thinking just very like, I'm a person who goes to work, who goes to school, who like does my laundry or whatever. Just asking them how they can restructure those relationships and prioritize them. And I think that this leads to a lot of things that are actually like beneficial to the environment and to the climate. So for example, things like working less, which obviously isn't something that like an individual can do to the same extent as like you can change on a larger level. But I think that that's something that you can like start with, and something that people can sort of slowly advocate for, and something that climate activists, when they're saying, what can we do now in the policy world to make things better, like advocate for less working hours, things like that, and make people be more creative.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Jessica. Do you have anything to add, Amra, or you'd like to add?
Sure. No talking? Uh-oh. I think I'll just speak really briefly for myself personally, as like an Indigenous person and as a parent, like I'm thinking about the next generation and what are we creating for our youth, thinking about my son and what is it going to be like for him as an awesome person in this world, and how is he going to see the land, our awesome Jabit, our awesome homeland, and will he know it, as liberated space? Will he know it as sacred space. Will he know it as a place of life, instead of, what, colonialism has tried to turn it into, at least the Sonoran doesn't, where we're from, as a space where people trying to go through it die, and that's not the land, the way that we want our youth to know our land. This land was always sacred. It was always a place of life. And so I think I would like, especially for him and for our Indigenous youth, to see, their land healed, and if we center that in our work, if we center healing the land in our work and healing our generations, I think that we can do something together. But that extends through solidarity, right? Like I have the same wish and aspiration for youth in the Philippines, for youth in Latin America, for youth across the world, that they see the land healed, that they see any type of historical or intergenerational trauma that colonialism and capitalism has caused their communities to be healed. That's really, I think, the goal of it.
Thanks, Samra. That makes a lot of fundamental sense to me, right? That is, to restructure society and focus on relationships, and actually how that would bring about healing and would take away from very individualistic aspirations that more often than not lead to more consumption. So yeah, that's really great and like very potentially transformative. So thank you. I'd like to engage I'd like to engage AGHAM now. Having heard, and these are very I guess like CIEJ and the Thacker Pass defense is mainly centered in the US. And I should mention to the audience that actually CIEJ and AGHAM are both published in our magazine. So Science for the People is a movement org, but also is a magazine. So, thank you for your contributions. And CIEJ talks extensively about lithium extractivism that's going on now, which is, very much a multinational encroachment, like, these multinational corporations that was described earlier, all around the world have been going through, and, including the Philippines, as Enteng and Feni have talked about. But so this article that AGHAM wrote is in the latest issue of SftP Mag, which is it's titled Racial Capitalism. And AGHAM identifies US imperialism, right, as sort of like a common enemy to many struggles. I'm curious, Feni or Enteng, how you see that show up in your struggles at home, and what commonalities you could draw from what's been talked about by Duranda and CIEJ with regards to extraction.
Okay. Actually, if we go back to the history of the relationship of Philippines to the US, it's around 124 years of antagonistic relationship, because they've been here for a very long time. They've stayed, they've colonized us, but they created the society, the semi-colonial and semi-feudal society, wherein they may not be here physically to colonize us, but they've controlled everything from economics, politics, and culture. So, it's hard to dismiss this historical oppression of the US, and they've tried to control everything, even at present time, that they've dictated what kind of investment to exploit our own resources. They're into energy investment, they're into mining, and even the big pharma. They've controlled everything, including the minds of the people. So it's really hard, actually, to fight this colonial mentality. But we're trying to, AGHAM's effort is to continue educating the people that we cannot just rely too much on imperialist countries like the US, because we have our own resources. In fact, we're trying to defend the issue on mining, because we're saying, but AGHAM is saying is that we're not against mining because we need that. We need it to develop our own agriculture. But we need a mining industry that is being dictated by our own people, owned by our own people. And that's the problem right now. You know, the policy environment right now is that all these industries, these strategic industries, are being controlled by big companies owned by, you know, imperialist countries like the U.S. They've been trying to, you know, take part on the international financial institutions like World Bank and Asian Development Bank, and they're the ones dictating to these corporations that we can lend you money, but this is our provisions. This is our you know, we negotiation. Like they're trying to lend all this, you know, money for investments in trying to plunder countries like the Philippines. And right now, that's what we are fighting. That we're trying to raise the consciousness, not only of among our ranks, among scientists, but we would also like to bring all this, the issue of the community to the scientists, because there was this, it was raised earlier, that how do we educate, how do we try to convince more scientists to take part in the struggles of the community. What we're trying to do right now is to bring these scientists to the communities being affected by these big projects, to be able to take part in their struggles and take part in the advocacy of of a science that advocates for the, you know, welfare of the people. Maybe Enten can also make some additional inputs.
Aside from Fanny said, providing services and joining the struggle of the people and communities on different issues. Again, like what we are doing now, it's very important to link and support other people's struggles and campaigns of organization outside the Philippines. Because as one of our participants said, this a imperialism is now dominant globally, so we need to fight it collectively. Though we know that our biggest contribution is to advance our struggle in the Philippines. At the same time, this will strengthen our solidarity work with other peoples and organization. Of course, fighting imperialism and for us promoting socialism, which I think is another topic to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you both. You know, thanks, Senny. That, you know, there's obviously a huge complex of issues, and, you know, like, right, the struggle in the Philippines going against all sorts of neoliberal global institutions, like you've identified. So we're going to be moving to Q&A real soon. I'm going to pass it to Sarah, but before we do, I do want to sneak in one question about, you know, like, there, I understand, you know, it's a complicated world and complicated histories, but like, how would you just quickly answer, like, or address the contradiction, right, of wanting to, you know, say, arrest the power from like an extractive, you know, imperial government from the U.S., but then also like the extractive government under Duterte, but then wanting to arrest that and then have mining continue? How do you address that versus what was said before by CIEJ, and like the attitudes expressed with like the extraction that's imparted by mining, right? Because, you know, there are indigenous lands in the Philippines too, right? And then I would assume that, you know, like, how would you harmonize needing to pursue further development, right, versus respecting the land rights there in the Philippines? Which is a very complicated question, but please.
Yeah, we've encountered all these questions because sometimes we are being misinterpreted that, these scientists, they still want to go on mining. But what we're saying is that what kind of mining we have right now is not a mining industry that does not actually reflect the need to help the society, to help our country. The mining industry, the framework of the mining industry in the Philippines is mostly imperialist control, imperialist dictates. So what we're trying to um, do right now is to educate the people. We still need mining, but what we need right now is to address the structural problem. We have the problem of imperialists dictating our own economy. What we're pushing forward right now is to make for the government, to challenge the government to create our own mining industry in a way that it will not be that worst to the communities. But what we're trying to do right now is to advocate a mining industry that is very much relevant to the needs of the country, but with the current society that we have right now, a semi-colonial and semi-feudal society, this will be impossible. That's why when we talk about mining industry, we talk about addressing the structural problems, addressing the problem of imperialism before we proceed with the kind of mining industry. The aspirations of the people is having a mining industry that actually provides the need of the people in terms of employment, in terms of developing our own industry, in terms of helping other sectors like the agricultural sector. That's a big challenge for us right now. But we're continuing, educating the people on this, that we're not against mining, we are against the imperialist controlled industry. We need mining, we need all these, projects on energy, but we still have to address the structural problems, and that includes a worst enemy, the imperialist dictates of our economy, of our politics and culture.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Fanny. So I think we are running late. I'll pass this on to Sarah, and we can address some of the audience questions. Will you, Sarah?
Yes. Right now I see two questions, and I'm just going to read them out, and whoever wants to answer to them, please do so with the intention that we'll wrap up within the next 5 minutes. The first question coming from Steven Fernandez asking, and the context for, he works at UMass Amherst, and many people want to focus exclusively on actions on our campus regardless, and lowering the UMass carbon footprint regardless of the negative impacts due to the increased use of lithium batteries. Are there any suggestions on how to get academic staff and students to embrace environmental justice, environmental reparations, and solidarity work with BIPOC communities rather than just working for carbon mitigation on our campus?
So that's a question that a sort of conflict that we run into a lot of the time in both the university setting, where there's, for example, like I'm at UC San Diego, there's this UC like Green New Deal at UCSD movement that's pushing for decarbonization, which means electrifying the bus fleet and all of these other sorts of technological things that like we've talked about, and in the sort of climate activist circles that we've been in, that's sort of what people push for too, and they'll even frame it in terms of supporting BIPOC communities, frontline communities, communities that are most directly impacted by climate change, especially local ones. And it's absolutely true that that the people who are most vulnerable because of race and income and geography are most impacted by climate change. But like that doesn't, make it okay to just displace those impacts to other people who are also marginalized and vulnerable. And so we like CIEJ put together a set of sort of do's and don'ts, just reframing a lot of these elements that we've seen in academic spaces and in just general climate spaces. So like, I'm trying to remember some of the specific ones. Reframing it from just a temperature and CO2 problem to a more holistic problem whose roots are colonialism and capitalism, and whose impacts are CO2, temperature, biodiversity, all of these other things as well. And yeah, I don't know, maybe this is just in conflict with the framework of a campus specific organizing, but hopefully we can slowly shift that sort of mentality and conversation. So not necessarily concrete answers, but sympathy with that.
Thank you, Jessica. And our last question up for anyone who wants to answer is coming from TA Tran. Is economic development possible without extraction? Maybe we need to think about economic development along a different path with different characteristics than taken by the industrialized West.
I think the basic answer to that is economic development for whom? Because we want to identify for whose development is all these industries, uh, they're um, owned and controlled by big corporations, and there's nothing left for the host country. That's the context here in the Philippines, that we've been receiving a lot of investments, but the problem is the translation of this investment. Right now in the Philippines, the mining industry, we're getting less than 1% of employment. And for so many years that we've been host to many large-scale corporations. But unfortunately, and this is a sad truth right now, that we're not getting this technology. We're not receiving, or at least at the level of technology transfer on, they invest for some time, and then they teach the Filipinos how to, do mining. But the problem is they just come and go. So we want to change, and we want to have this current framework, to change this current framework, that it's more on semi-colonial and semi-feudal, that we want to control and to own our own industry. We want to do mining. Filipinos would like to, develop our own, harness our own resources. But we cannot do that right now because we are being, controlled. We are being dictated by this imperialist nation, and it's being expressed by, the current administration. That's why I think economic development is possible, but the right question is economic development for whom? That's the question that we've always been posing with some scientists, that they've been actually, we have so many members, geologists, and they were saying that, oh, AGHAM is against against mining. But we're trying to correct that. We're saying that we need mining for manufacturing and agriculture, but we need a mining industry that serves the interests of the country, and not mining that serves the interests of the big corporations and imperialist nations.
Thank you, Fanny. I think there's also some good discussion in the chat. I encourage everyone to read, and I think Ed is gonna close us out.
Yeah, unless any of our panelists have any, final words to express, we'll move to closing. So before we do, is there anyone that wants to say something?
Can I?
Sure, Antang, please.
Yeah, on direct questions of can we move? I'm saying on the global context, of course, I think we can move or we can have a new economy without extraction, new resources, given the volume we have globally extracted from our environment, from this earth, the enormous materials and products that are available now. I think we could recycle that just to conserve our remaining resources, at the same time preserve and protect our environment. But again, it's not only the question of extraction or the available materials or the level of technology and knowledge we have now. As we are all know, imperialism means the control of politics. So again, it's not possible to see an economy uh, without extractive industry without solving first the problem of imperialist control at the global level and at the national level. Thanks.
Okay, well, thank you, Enteng, for providing your final thoughts. Do we have any more questions? Are we ready to?
There's one more from LM for Duranda, which is, what are the immediate timelines that Protect Thacker Pass coalitions are facing in the next couple months?
Oh, sorry, I moved outside. But yeah, so there's a court hearing with a lawsuit coming up on the 21st of July. And so that's going to decide whether they come and excavate cultural sites in Thacker Pass. And so I didn't mention this before, but I should have. Thacker Pass is also known in Paiute as Bihimaha, and that translates in English to rotten moon. And so there was oral history behind this area, that there was massacre here. And so that's why they're coming in to excavate the cultural sites. And so that's coming up, something we need to be looking, like putting on our calendar and asking people to stand with us in solidarity, as well as possibly, doing nonviolent direct action. And so, if you would like to, it'd be really great, if you can spread the word somehow, some way. That's really what we need from our partners, is really just getting the word out. But yeah, that's really like the major thing. We have other events coming up, but really that is the one thing that we're counting down to.
Thank you, Duranda. And, we'd love to, I'm sure everyone in the BIPOC caucus would love to boost that signal. And I'm quite sure the rest of SftP would as well. So I think this is like sort of the fruitful outcome of getting together, from different spheres. Although I'm sure that there's a lot more to hash out with regards to our different ideas of what moving forward looks like. But I think the real power when we talk about people's movements is supporting each other. So thank you so much for all our panelists, or to all our panelists, for being here. I hope this is the start of something and not the end of it. I hope we can continue to build together and support each other and keep on growing the movement. Thank you all. And thanks to
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Solidarity.
Solidarity.